Hi guys, this is MG of MBTI Time, and in today's episode, I will be talking with a fellow INFP to discuss the common misconceptions on INFP. So, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and to subscribe to my channel if you want to learn more about the 16 types. And follow me in my socials on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook if you want to see more memes and content about all the 16 types. So, yeah, let's get right to the video.
Hi, everyone. My name is Candice. I am an INFP, and I'm really excited to be here talking to you guys today and also to a fellow INFP who's doing great things in the Myers Briggs world. I super admire that. And I have always been involved in marketing, branding, aesthetics, social media, that kind of thing. But my lifelong passion has always been in psychology, and my goal is to become a therapist. So I'm back in school for that. But at the moment, I'm helping out my family business, which is running a beer company in Hawaii. So if any of you guys are ever in Hawaii, please check out Aloha Beer and drinks on me. Let's talk about Myers-Briggs. Like I'm such a personality nerd that I would love talking to you. And also, if you're interested, you can follow me on Instagram at Candice and Packard. And yeah, that's about it.
Thank you, Candice. So, hi guys, this is MJ of MBTI Time, and I'm really excited to have this conversation with Candice, a fellow INFP. And I know that you guys might be very excited also to hear more about the common misconceptions on INFP. So, do follow her on all of her socials. I'll link them down below later on. So, so I'll just get right to with the question. So, my first question would be, what do you think are the common misconceptions on INFPs?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think many other INFPs will relate to this, but we're definitely known as being very emo, crybabies, overly sensitive, maybe moody, shy, hard to get to know, mysterious. But if I'm being honest, I feel like there is definitely a huge foundational part of me that is all of those traits. But I feel like as INFPs, we're so much more.
So, like, how do you feel about like the stereotypes that fall under us, like being crybabies, being emotional, and all of that? Is it something that you think is a spectrum, or is it like from time to time it happens, but not so much of like every single INFP is like this, especially with
Okay,
your based on your
so
experience.
yeah. Oh, so I forgot to mention this in my introduction, but I am also MBTI certified. And funny story about that, I was in a class of about 20 people in this class, and everybody else was there for like career purposes. So whether they wanted to be a counselor, career counselor, school counselor. But for me, I was the only one there that was there for just like self interest and self knowledge. So I thought that was really interesting and very indicative of INFPs.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think going back to the question, I do think we fall on a spectrum, and I do think that INFPs go through seasons. Yeah, like there's so much more to us than that. Like we're a lot more complex than our surface would indicate.
Mm-hmm.
And but I guess like speaking just on my personal behalf, like I definitely was that stereotypical in high school emo kid.
Yeah. Actually, now that you mentioned it, do you happen to know what your Enneagram is?
So the last time I looked, and I'm not too well versed in Enneagram, but I am a four wing three, but definitely a four, which is individualist. How about you?
Mhm. I'm actually a six wing seven.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. So actually, that makes me come across as a little bit more sociable than a typical INFP would. So I think that's one of the things that could possibly factor in with how we come across. Because like I've seen a various like spectrum of INFPs in my life. Because maybe I'm
Yeah.
also in marketing and design
Mhm.
in terms of like my career. And so most of the people I actually grew up with, like went to school with and all of that, and my friends are either INFPs, ENTPs, or INFJs, and I'm like, and ENFPs also. So a lot of intuitives, and so it was nice to see many types in different forms. And actually, to add to what you said, I actually did go through an emo phase growing up as well. And I don't know if it's because my parents were very different from me that I felt like
Mhm.
a quote unquote misfit, and similar to like being surrounded by different types of kids and not really knowing how to navigate through being the quiet child when I was younger. I only became
Yeah.
more quote unquote confident and more assertive and more uninhibited, I guess, when I reached my mid to late 20s. That's the only time I
Yeah.
kind
You
became
know,
more
like
like that.
yeah, I was gonna comment and say that like you're very like confident and talkative, which is like something I admire. I feel like I am confident when maybe I drink a few beers or something like that. So like the fact that that's your natural state is super cool. And I know you mentioned that your father is an ISTJ. What was
Mhm.
your mom?
My mom is an ENFP as well as my sibling. So there was like from the get go growing up, there was already like a okay, they're very different people. I'm very different from him. And funny that you mentioned, I think a lot of INFPs early on developed this natural interest for psychology, personality, for reason that they want to understand themselves better or why they feel different. And that's what
Mhm.
happened to me. I learned more about I learned about personality typing at age 12 because I was just like, why don't me and my dad get along? Why do I feel so like this compared to him? Because I felt very um I cannot meet the expectations of a parent who naturally is a certain way. And I also didn't want to resent him for being who he is. And that's when I started learning more about type because I wanted to understand why I felt different and why he was different to the three of us, me and my sibling and my mom.
Yeah,
So
no, I totally feel the same. Like, I feel like when you start learning about personality types, it just like unlocks a box where you're just like, I get it. I get that's why you are the way you are. And
yeah.
because of that, I can't even hate on that because it's just your natural wiring, you know?
Yeah. And it's like a double-edged sword for INFPs, I would say, because on one hand, we're very understanding and we're like, I get you, I can't really hate you, even like, oh, I've killed somebody. I'm like, oh, why did you do that? We would seek to understand rather than to judge. And then on the other end of the spectrum, kind of abused spectrum
Oh, I
where,
agree. Yeah, we're
right?
definitely taken advantage of. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I always like wanna encourage with INFPs to like trust your intuition when it comes to people,
Hmm.
not like turn red flags into pink flags and all of that. If
Yeah.
you feel like there's something off, like trust your gut and don't just think that oh maybe I'm just judging them harshly or maybe you're really picking up on something and so like dig deeper and don't trust people so easily. So that's
Yeah,
something
yeah,
I've
I
learned over
agree.
time.
Yeah, yeah. Another thing that I've learned kind of related to that is like
Mhm.
I definitely have opinions and gut instincts on like everybody that I meet, but I've kind of learned to keep those to myself because before I used to like share with everybody like, "Oh, I think this person is this way because of their behavior and whatever."
Mhm.
But like as I've gotten older, I feel like that definitely will step on some toes and things. So I've had to learn to dial it back and just like keep it to myself and that's okay, you know?
Actually, that's interesting because I've noticed that INFPs tend to be associated with being sensitive, as in like sensitive to other people's feelings, but also I noticed we're more um less likely to care about what people think about a truth or an opinion that
Yeah.
we strongly believe in, which makes us come across as looking like we're thinkers,
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
right?
Yeah. You're so right. And I feel like it's because we seek honesty and truth. And
Mhm.
that's why we don't have a filter when it comes to those things that we honestly think. And like
Yeah.
I feel like we're so like misconstrued and like I don't know. I feel like we're very misunderstood, but I feel like at the heart of it, our intentions are good.
Yeah. And I think I don't know if this is also an FI thing, FI dom thing, but since a lot of our real emotions are concealed, I am not as warm in real life as I would
Oh my
like
God,
to be.
I so agree with that. Like inside, I feel like, oh, I'm so empathetic and caring about everyone, but outside, that is not true at all.
Yeah, I'm just like, oh no, how do I come across as more friendly and caring than I would like to
Yeah,
be compared like to our
yeah,
FE counterparts? So I'm like,
exactly.
it's so hard because like maybe that's why a lot of feelers, a lot of people who don't identify with the memes on INFPs being soft crybabies who are just sensitive and want to, nature and like flowers and like clouds, like all of that stuff. And it's like in reality, when you really see an INFP in the wild, it's really hard to kind of identify whether or not they're an F because our feelings are um detached from what we show. It's like you'll never know
Totally.
that I'm feeling what I'm feeling unless I permit myself to show you this,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. Yeah. It's like we're so self-aware that we know
Mhm.
to conceal our true feelings, and like
Yeah.
sometimes that works to our detriment, but it's like we can't help it.
Yeah, and a lot of times people kind of take it against us because why are you being rude or why are you coming across as impolite, because like I'm not as friendly or like saying hi to everybody, or like you would say some controversial things in a group conversation or like, oh, why did you say that, you didn't have to say that, and
Hmm,
so,
hmm.
and the problem is that most of the times we don't care if
Yeah, and
we
we
offend.
also understand that like
Mhm.
most of people's external behavior is
Mhm.
dictated by societal norms,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, who cares about that? Like someone else decided that. Like, why wouldn't you just be authentic and true to yourself?
Which makes us really good at detecting in like ingenuity,
Yes, yes, totally.
right? So that's something that I actually admire about INFPs.
Yeah.
Which now leads me to my next question. So now that we've talked about some of the stereotypes that mostly are associated with INFPs, what are stereotypes don't you personally identify with that you see in memes and posts and blog posts and all that?
Okay, so I think, like, at least to a minimum degree, I
Mhm.
do agree with a lot of our stereotypes and memes.
Mhm.
But one thing that I don't agree with is that we're not logical. I mean, we kind of touched on this earlier, but I don't know. I feel like we're so observant to a fault that people underestimate us like all the time.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
right? Yeah, and it's like yes, we spend hours upon hours just daydreaming, but like within those daydreams, we're actually like playing out scenarios of like every possible thing that could happen, and that's why we're so prepared, and like we know what to expect in real life when it actually transpires. Like at least that's how I feel.
Yeah. I think for me, regarding what you said, it was more of a phase. When I entered the corporate world years ago, I was a little bit too idealistic. I have this notion where if I'm good to you, you'll be good to me. But like lo and behold, that's not how the world works. People
Mm-hmm.
sometimes really just are after profit and are only see people as a utility, and not everybody shares the same value values as I do. And
Mm-hmm.
that kind of really broke my heart a bit early on
Oh my
because,
God, I totally agree.
right?
Like, that has been my life's journey is that I was very, very idealistic. Like, I think as INFPs, we look for the beauty in everything, which is why we're really good at like aesthetics and design, right? Like, I
Yeah.
think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, wait, what was I saying?
Oh, you were talking about how we're good at like aesthetics, and prior to that, you were mentioning how a lot of we were talking about the stereotype of being um not as
Oh, right.
logical. Yeah.
Okay, so I really relate to like your corporate experience
Mhm.
because like I literally had to hit rock bottom and shatter my own heart because I think that I was really naive in how I saw the world.
Yes.
I still feel like I want to see the world in a very idealistic and beautiful light, but the older you get, the more you realize like that's not how it is. And I don't know, to an INFP, I feel like that really sucks. And every INFP is just going to have to go through that where the reality of life is going to shatter your heart, but it's okay. It's a journey that we all have to go through, and it just makes us stronger in the long run.
Yeah, and I agree. Over time, that kind of helped me. I remember my ESTP mentor, kind of like giving me this pep talk on how she said, you have to enter the world and really think that in as much as somebody can do good, they can also do bad. And so, just like I keep on making the same mistakes. So I was just like, I think she was just really trying to straighten me up and say, look, you're too nice. Sometimes being too nice is not good, you know? So,
Yes.
not to say that you have to be mean, but you have to be cautious. You have to be like, be more aware of how people are not like you.
Yeah.
Sometimes,
Yeah.
some of them are capable of doing evil or bad for different reasons outside of you. And so you have to acknowledge that because sometimes I enter friendships and agreements blindly, hoping that they would like not screw me over or like betray me or anything like that. And then lo and behold,
Mm-hmm.
we end up in such situations where it really breaks our hearts, which I feel like is what will help us become more, I don't know, like conscious or be more mindful of like not giving our hearts away easily
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like that's probably the life journey of an INFP is like
Yeah.
to get accustomed to seeing reality for what it is.
Yes.
And and also like one thing that I still struggle with too is just like being assertive, like like you said, like I'm just too nice and too understanding. And like to some extent I feel like why wouldn't you be understanding to everybody, but at the same time like I know that I'm just way too passive, and that's something I'm still working on. It's just like being assertive, speaking my mind instead of just being quiet and like listening and observing. I don't know, like have you ever dealt with that kind of stuff?
I think the funny thing is, when I was younger, I was very shy and timid and like really seemed very unsure of myself. But as I grew older, I think I can also attribute this to being a six wing seven, a counterphobic six wing seven. So essentially, what it means to be a counterphobic is like I fear something. The sixes are anxious people. I fear something, but I go for it anyway, just to like overcome my fear. And
That's
so
awesome.
and so over time, when I learned to embrace that side of me and use it to my advantage, um, I naturally kind of learned over time to be more like if I want something, I go after it. If they can't decide, I will decide. I think it's the TE eventually also developing, like
Mm-hmm.
making me more decisive in certain periods of in certain occasions, but not all the time. I'm still indecisive about like where do I go, what am I gonna do with my life. I don't know the big things, but like, where are we gonna eat? Okay, if no one can decide, we're gonna go here, you know? And I think that's why a lot of people find it hard to believe now that I'm an INFP because I come across a little bit more self-assured, but in actuality, I really just faked it until I make it. I wasn't like this for the most part of my life. And it's just by training, like being in marketing, presenting, and also teaching, because I also teach. That somewhat shaped my confidence that, a lot of the stuff in my head is not actually happening in reality. Like all of my fears, like being embarrassed, being um humiliated, which is something that we really genuinely don't like because a lot
Mm-hmm.
of INFPs take some time to process and to
Oh yeah.
explain, you know.
Yeah.
So for people who are curious how we met, I actually was the first one who knew about her. Like years ago, I was really up in Cora, all the time just reading about INFPs, INTG, because I was with the 90s at the time. And I was just like,
Nice.
and I was like, I want to know more about people. And I was like, you seem very put together, and the way you conveyed your thoughts was very, like what you said, logical, and you seemed like very analytical as a person. um that kind of like made me want to know more about you, but I couldn't really connect with you at the time because obviously the nature of Quora is like you have to follow each other, and you are kind of popular there. So there was no way for me to reach out to you at the time. So it's funny now how Instagram, social media allowed our paths to cross, especially when I saw you
Yeah.
following me. I was like, oh,
No, I mean your Instagram page is just like exploding. So like yeah, I followed you because I was like, who is this awesome account? Like it's so funny. Like I love the content. So yeah, it's mutual.
thank you so much. Which actually now leads me to my next question. You already actually mentioned one thing. But what do you think are INFP's underrated traits? So you already mentioned that a lot of people don't know or don't notice that, hey, we're actually pretty logical or pretty analytical. You can expound on this and you can include other things that you feel like people don't know much or don't appreciate as much about INFPs.
Yeah, it's kind of like to a similar vein, but I would say our most underrated traits are our minds. Because not only can we, observe in reality and therefore be analytical and logical, but like we have that crazy imagination side to us where we're like so idealistic and daydreaming. And I feel like when you combine those, it's like not to like sound superior or anything, but it's like I feel like we could dominate in the real world or like fantasy world, you know? Like
Yeah.
I feel like our minds are just such a beautiful place because all we seek as INFPs is beauty.
That's true. I think this is gonna tie up to my next question about FI because I think a lot of us we embrace and acknowledge that we are number one. Yes, we are indeed sensitive. We are emotional. In every sense of the word, but it's not really just that, you know. And I don't. Would you mind sharing like instances where you think your analytical side shines through in your work, in your problem solving skills, and even with your say partnership with your with INTJ. Perhaps you can shed light on that interaction and how that shines through in your relationships and your work or your career and other things.
Yeah, so I think one of our strengths in that regard is that we're pretty imaginative
Mm-hmm.
about like reality, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So we're creative in a way that we can actually concretely contribute to things
Mm-hmm.
rather than, just like being creative for creative sake or, just in la la land. Like I don't think we're like that at all, even though that's how a lot of people make us out to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, going back to your question about like FI,
Mm-hmm.
and introverted feeling,
Yeah.
I feel like FI is really just being so in touch with yourself that you know the ins and outs of yourself and you know exactly how you would act or react in any situation.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a really long time to realize that not everybody is wired that way. I kind of thought for the longest time that, like, isn't that how everybody is? But it took me a really long time to realize that no, it's not. Like, we're in the minority.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's what makes us special. And I think that's what other people see too is like, how and why are they so in touch with themselves? And it's almost like a confusing mystery. Like, what is it about them? Like, why are they able to do that?
Yeah. Actually, there's this realization I have about FI because I understand FI to be our grasp with our emotional processes. You know how
Mm-hmm.
we have like a complex catalog of emotions,
Yeah,
which by the more we understand ourselves, the more we understand other people and their intentions and their
exactly. Yes.
motivations and all that. And that's why we're good at reading people by virtue of like learning how like, we can be good and are bad and bad. Like the darkness and the light, um,
Mm-hmm.
the extreme ends and seeing the spectrum of how a human can be and operate is how we learned how to kind of interact and navigate through our interactions with others. Um, I guess the thing that bothers me the most is that FI is often watered down to emotionality, uniqueness like snowflake. Actually, which I would like to debunk because I don't think, on the contrary, I don't think that INFPs want to be special in a sense that, oh, I'm so unique. Actually, I think we want to just be accepted as we are. We're not
Yeah.
misunderstood. We're not understood and are not accepted. And so, which is the hardest thing to an INFP in a society where when you kind of put it into a hierarchy, what is valued the most among the eight functions? I feel like one of the most valued would be TE and FE and I and like
Oh
FI
yeah.
somewhere over there,
Yeah.
somewhere down there, you know?
Yeah, I would say definitely TE and NI, maybe TI too, like are the
Mhm.
favorite traits for sure.
Yeah. And it's hard because first of all we have T in our fourth slot,
Hmm.
and we don't have FE in our first four, so we don't really know how to be with people or I would say is it conform, but like it's hard to just be what other expect us to be, and just to put it
Hmm.
mildly. Um, that's why a lot of us feel very, I would say, isolated, and that's why we find comfort mostly with fellow FI users, even
Hmm.
people who are like INTJs, you know, especially those who have developed their FI over time and understood the beauty of it. Um, and I think going back, we don't seek to be unique. We just seek to be understood and respected for our
Yes,
uniqueness,
we seek to be understood in the same depth and level that we understand others,
which they don't.
And
Yeah, which they don't.
yeah, like that's exactly it.
Yeah, and that's why I
Yeah,
don't go on.
I don't know. Like just going back to our previous conversation,
Mhm.
I think it's so funny that we're not good externally with people and dealing with people, but
Yeah,
like like we're so good at honing in on like human behavior and observing humans, you
yeah,
know?
we're good at one-on-ones. Actually, we
Oh
prefer it.
yeah, yeah. Yes.
Um, if,
Absolutely. If this was like a Zoom call with like 20 people, like I wouldn't say a word, I think. I'd be
yeah, I'm
too
probably
scared to jump
distracted.
in. Yeah,
And be
yeah.
distracted and be like, okay, what's the point of all of this? It's
Yeah.
just many. It's the same with being in a group, too huge of a group. So I think that's how my introversion shines. I thrive in smaller groups, like groups of
Mhm.
two or three at most,
Yeah.
um, because that's how we get to know each other and not like just not know like know people on the surface but not really know them deep down.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's how I feel like what I appreciate about FI users in general, FI DOMs and Ox. They really try to get to know you on a deeper level and
Mhm.
make that real genuine connection and rather than just a fleeting one. But
Oh
not to
yeah,
say we're still
absolutely.
although not to say that we're good at maintaining friendships.
Oh no, no. You're right. Yeah, but yeah, like that's one of the things about the benefits of having an FI user as a friend is that it's never surface. We care so much. Like it's
And we're
so deep.
yeah, and we're pretty low maintenance.
Yeah, we are.
It's like I have a lot of INFP friends, and we wouldn't hang out in person for like weeks to months. And when we meet each other, we talk for hours as though nothing really happened.
Exactly. Yeah,
Right?
that's the way it should be, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess not for everybody, but for us, it works because we don't have
Hmm.
to take it against each other for
Yeah.
having our own thing going on for a long time.
Right, right. There's like no offense taken. It's like not personal at all.
Yeah. And although the funny thing is, when we do get into relationships, most of our energies and affections are usually just focused into one individual.
Oh yeah, like too much maybe. Like yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like it just goes back to our obsessive need to understand other people on a very deep level and like wanting that same understanding back. But kind of knowing that maybe we'll never get it, but it's okay too.
Yeah. Actually the funny thing is, Young really struggled to describe what FI is. Because I mean when you really look at the nature of the function, like similar with NI and DI, um it's introverted by nature, and so those who really understand it the most are those who possess it.
Mhm.
And that's why I find it, I guess the thing that frustrates me the most in communities is that I've heard somebody describe FI as selfish and FE as selfless. Now that we're here to kind of like talk about it or discuss it, what is your take on that statement? How would somebody, actually, it was an FE user, so unsurprisingly, they would say it that way. But what is your take on like people depicting us as selfish? You know?
Ooh, that was like definitely something that I struggled with for a while because I don't know, to an INFP to be called selfish is like very hurtful,
Mhm.
because like we don't intend or mean to come across that way at all, you
Yeah.
know? But it's like I had to really just readjust my thinking and realize that there are so many people who don't even have FI in their stack. So they can't even begin to understand what FI is like. So, of course, to them, like we're going to seem very self centered, very selfish, always like talking about the world through our lens. But that's just the way we understand the world. So, I don't know, like to me, I can't really relate to FE, but that's okay.
Yeah, makes sense. Um, that's why I think that's why I created these conversations, because I feel like it's hard. I've actually had a conversation with an ENTP friend about this, and she also felt the same, I guess, about FI. And we tried to come into a. This is a friend I've known for years, like in real life, and we geek on typology, growing up, and that's why I wanted to hear her take on it. And I saw that, I guess, the way we operate sometimes to their perspective as FE users is when, say, we want to do something, it's when we want to do it. It's really based on what is aligned to who we are, i.e., being authentic.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't mean that functions are selfish. I think my take on it is that no function is inherently good or bad. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Yeah.
And so to really just describe functions as a very black and white, like, oh, this is a good function, this is a bad function, it's very discouraging to people who
Mm-hmm.
possess it. Because like
Yeah.
if you find yourself to be a new person in type, and you hear that, oh, FI is like this and FE is like that, um, it's then harder for us to like, are we really like this? Or are we not? Well, in fact, I don't think that we are. It's just how we come across. It's the same with our perception of FE, of
Yeah.
the disingenuity that comes across with FE, with like people pleasing and like going with the crowd and all that. Perhaps there's something we don't understand about it, but it doesn't mean that's what it is. But I dislike how it's always like FI is being demonized. Essentially, that's just how it is. Like when you actually
Mm-hmm.
engage in the community, you will see how FI is always demonized into this selfish, emotional, illogical thing
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
people dislike.
Yeah,
And it's
I think like a really good like comparison or analogy is if you think about like FI as being a very deep, deep, deep version of FE and FE being a more like broad scatter of emotions and affection, I
mhm,
feel like you could apply that same logic to TI versus TE. TI is like so honed in on like the most minuscule details. Like they like really get to know their craft to the core versus
yeah.
TE is more about like what makes sense for everyone, you know?
Let's just get
And
this
and
done.
yes, exactly. And I feel like that's how we should look at FE versus FI is like
Mhm.
it's very similar to TE and TI.
Yeah. But like TI and TE, as in like what you mentioned earlier, is more quote unquote respectable in
That's true. Because it's not
society.
emotions. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like, oh, I pride myself as logical. I pride myself as unattached to your personal biases and opinion, which is
Mm-hmm.
what also they associate FI with, being very subjective and
Mm-hmm.
incapable of rationality, which is actually not really true. I really feel like if you
Mm-hmm.
talk to INFPs, you will recognize that they're very objective, and it's only manifesting in unhealthy INFPs and any FE user. To be honest, we're all, as I've mentioned to my INTP partner, there is subjectivity and biases even to your own logic. You want to believe what you believe, whether it's facts
Mm-hmm.
or opinion. So
Yeah,
if you
totally.
feel like the world is created in this way and like say something controversial, God doesn't exist, or like science is whatever, that is true to you because you want to believe in it for evidence
Mhm.
that you believe that can also still be manipulated,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
totally. I agree. Like beliefs can be applied to emotional feelings or logic. Like it's still
Yeah,
beliefs. Yeah.
exactly. And so I always remind people that there is subjectivity to whatever we believe in, even if you think that it's very cerebral in nature. And that's why sometimes it's dangerous to always just water it down to, oh, this one's like this or this one's like that because science dictated that it's like this. And the way you're responding to me is very. Oh, actually, this is what I always remind FI users. Thinkers are not put off by emotions in a sense where, oh, this is very icky. But most often, those who have frowned upon, say, hyper emotional people, they're not frowning upon the fact that you're emotional. They're frowning upon the fact that the way you're showing your emotion is very, what, like, illogical to them. Like, passive aggression or outbursts or, like, getting mad at somebody or being reactive is what annoys people who are thinkers, you know?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I feel like because they don't understand it innately, that's
Mhm.
what also gives them a curiosity about it. And like, I think that's why like feelers and thinkers are often attracted to each other because, like, I mean, even for me as a feeler, it's like when I meet super, super hyper logical people, I'm like, wow, you're so fascinating. And I'd like to think that it's like a mutual thing.
Yeah. And especially if you're on the more maturing spectrum
Hmm.
of both sides, like if you're a maturing feeler and a thinker, that's when both come together
Oh, yeah.
like smoothly. Because of course, if you're a feeler who always takes offense in what a thinker says when it's not really meant to offend, that's something that would turn off or put off a thinker, right? But if
Mhm.
both are waiting to understand, oh, why are you feeling what you're feeling right now? Let's talk it out. Let's like
Mhm.
approach this in a logical way that will, that will allow us to meet halfway, is what will kind of help both types to grow in areas where they're weak. Which is why
Yeah, absolutely.
I think your INTJ, I would assume, and even with the INTP, appreciate what we have in our emotional depth and understanding. Which now leads me, I guess, to my next question. What do you wish people to understand more about INFPs?
Um, okay, so I apologize that like all my answers are kind of similar, but it's that's how strongly I feel about it. But like I would say, I want people to understand like don't underestimate us, you know? Like, yes, we're passive and observant, but like we introspect and question ourselves in the universe way more than you probably think and way more than we let on.
Mhm.
And I feel like maybe we're mysterious and underrated because no one can see inside of our minds. And yeah, like I said this before, but I'm sure other INFPs will relate that our minds are beautiful and I love being in my mind. And like it's often more beautiful than external reality. And it's where I prefer to be.
Very reminiscent of like Hayao Miyazaki's world. Like
Yeah.
I feel like I think that's why I would describe INFPs most often, not just as daydreamers, but we tend to be very otherworldly
Mhm,
um
mhm.
in that sense and in a good way.
Yeah. And it's interesting that like people will say that we have very dreamy eyes or honest eyes. Like I don't know what that means because like I can't see it, but I guess compared to the spectrum of people, like our eyes are different, and that's really interesting.
Yeah, actually I saw a post before of the the different types and the different eyes that they have. Like someone drew what kind of eyes each type possess, and I kind of understand or see how our eyes would come across as like this, in the same way that an ENFP would have very wide eyes, very like, oh, like kind of like that. And similar with INTJs having this old blank stare.
Yeah.
I was like,
Which
okay,
is
it's like
like, yeah, it's adorable in its own way.
yeah. And
Yeah.
they probably don't see it that way, you know? To them it's just like it's like this.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's just hard to see yourself, I guess.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Um last I think would be I think this is a little bit more sensitive and something that it's more of like a what would I want to tell my younger self or something. But essentially, why should an INFP actually embrace being an INFP? What is our superpower?
Okay, that's an awesome question because like if I could go back in time and tell myself things, like I would tell myself so much, because I was just so like scared, insecure, unsure, like that was my personality as a child, But I would say that our superpower is honestly like caring so freaking much about the things that we care about. And
Mhm.
like I know it's common to say that people will give 110% when they um, when they care about something, but I feel like for INFPs it's like a whole different level. Like we'll give like 100,000%, and like to the level that no one even asked for it because we just care. And like if you care, then why wouldn't you put everything, your soul, your body, your mind into it, and like, but I mean that's just the way I think as an INFP. And I guess like another thing that I would like to tell INFPs is that I know that it's our nature to be like observant and passive, but once in a while you have these reality checks and moments in clarity where you realize like we only have one life, like this is not a dress rehearsal, like this is it. So you might as well live life exactly the way you want and not be dictated by other people's perceptions of you. Like
Mhm.
don't ever let that hold you back. And I guess that's what I would want to tell myself if I could
Actually,
go back in time.
yeah, I agree. And I think even just to add to what you said, this is yeah, we only have one shot to live the life that we have. And I feel like I guess we haven't talked about this, but you would know for a fact that a lot of us most often struggle with our self-esteem. We always undermine our abilities. Like, of course, right now we're like kind of tooting our own horn and all that as a way to encourage ourselves. But in actuality, when alone to ourselves in our rooms and when we're just reflecting, there are bouts of insecurity and like wondering if we're actually even capable, you know?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and I think that's something that I wish INFPs would know, even to myself, who is very like, oh, I can do this. And then later on, oh shit, can I actually do it?
Yeah, yeah. And
Um,
like it's so crazy because like as fervently as we want this message to come across to other younger INFPs, I feel
mhm,
like it's almost a lost cause because INFPs just have to experience things for themselves in order to
mhm.
truly understand, and I know that was the case for me.
Yeah, it's the same with me. Actually, I have a support group for INFPs. Just just so they know that they're not alone, really, because a lot
Yeah,
of
yeah,
us
that's cool.
admittedly grew up feeling alone, you know,
Hmm.
and mostly we feel at home, we feel accepted and welcomed by fellow INFPs. And I wish I had that when I was growing up. But most importantly, I don't want INFPs to not. There are people who say they didn't want to be INFPs, and that hurts me. You know, that's
Yeah.
why I always want to model or become a good example of how, hey, I'm an INFP, and these amazing people are also INFPs, like the authors that we talked about earlier or the
Hmm.
psychologists that I really love. There are people who are thriving, real INFPs, or who are thriving in the real world, doing what they love, what they're passionate
Hmm.
about, what they care about the most. And what's to stop us from becoming like them, you
Hmm.
know,
Yeah,
achieving.
exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I wish that INFPs would see that. Because I think that's what I've noticed about TI and FI users. TI is hailed as like, or INFPs are hailed as the most intelligent type across the spectrum of types. But they are the ones who don't believe in themselves the most in actuality.
That's interesting. Yeah.
You know, and it's somewhat similar to INFPs. Like, look at the famous artists. Look at Van Gogh. He died only being recognized and after years of suffering from all of
Oh
the things that
yeah.
he
It
felt.
was just like all self-torment, and like
Yeah.
I totally understand. Like it's
Mhm.
so relatable and so tragic.
Yeah. And that's why I felt for him because damn, that's just me, except in 2021, except in this at present time. And I wish that he knew that he was well revered and respected and sought after his works
Yeah.
after he passed on. And I feel like it's the same for other INFPs who struggle with wanting to live. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
many of us have gone through that. Actually, I would admit that even I have also struggled with this. But over time, I realized that, there's beauty in living, and life and people would miss out if we didn't exist, if our creations didn't exist. The movies we've created, the books written, the animations, the art that we've put out, all of these are being admired by people who put us down. It's the funny thing.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And like I'm on the same page as you, and I feel like it's almost our responsibility as older and mature INFPs to really share that message,
Mhm.
because yeah, I suffered with like so much crap in life, just like low self-esteem, like depression, body image, eating disorder, like you name it, it was all self-inflicted. But
Mhm.
like I don't know. I feel like we can be good role models to the younger INFPs who might be going through that right now.
Yeah. That's why I'm doing
Yeah.
this. That's why I'm doing this
Yeah, that's
channel. I'm doing all of
awesome.
these things. It's
Yeah.
hard, honestly, because being a perceiver, obviously, it's like, and having FI, everything mostly boils down to, do I feel like doing this today? Do I want to keep on doing
Hmm.
this? Will it actually reap the rewards that
Right.
I want over
Yeah.
time? But I kind of just reel back into my mission as an INFP. The reason why I try to coach people, the reason why I try to help them understand and love themselves better through these like conversations is because there is a point where you didn't just want to do anything with your life,
Hmm.
but you know that you're meant to do something great. It's like a
Hmm.
potential that's waiting to be awakened. So for
Yes.
younger or more discouraged INFPs out there, or even people who are dealing with INFPs, I wish that you would really just see that there's something in you that the world needs, you know?
Yes. Absolutely. And like I'm so glad that we're doing this and like sharing that message with other INFPs. Like, and I also just want to like share that I'm 32 now, but I still struggle on a daily basis with like self-esteem and just being assertive, speaking my mind, because I'm just constantly like comparing myself to other people. But like yeah, at the end of the day, it's all self-imposed, and I feel like all INFPs need to like start processing it. Like I know it's going to take a while to really internalize it, but at least start processing it.
Yeah. Because when you're processing it, the more that you know, the more you become self-aware, and the more
Yeah.
that you're compelled to kind of make that change. I think that's what happened between the two of us. In different ways.
Hmm.
We knew what we knew. We know what we know now. What do we do with what we know? You know.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's like
So
it's all in here. How do we put it into action?
yeah, because
Yeah.
I know that it's like it's not enough that we know. We have the knowledge. We have to actually put it to use. And I think
Hmm.
that's why even doing this channel, it took me a year or to really do it. I really appreciate the FE users in my life who pushed me to do the account, that Instagram. Because I didn't want to do it before. I was just like, oh, there's too many people in there already. No one's gonna like my stuff. I was just on Twitter. I just like I just make memes and content to like kind of vomit it on Twitter, even if no one likes it. But then somebody saw like, hey, your stuff's great. You should probably put it there. And I'm like, fine. But that happened a year later. Really. Like everything that I've been meaning to do happens like it takes forever to do what I want to do. And it takes somebody who believes in us
Yes, yes.
to
And I
really.
so relate to that where
Mhm.
like when people encourage me to do things or they give me compliments, I'm always just like, "Oh, no, no, no. Like there's too many people doing that already. The space is too crowded. Like no one's going to listen to me." Like that's my default thought, but yeah, like definitely if you have those encouraging people in your life to like draw out that gem, I feel like it's so worth it.
Yeah. So I'm glad that, and I hope that you will continually be surrounded by people who see the good and the best in you, and kind of like really push you to challenge yourself constantly. And I'm really just grateful even also for mine. So I think all INFPs need to keep on remaining open to other people. Even if we're
Mhm.
introverted, we have to remain open because we don't know if the next person that we'll be friends with or will be close with will be the person to see that something that you didn't know you have.
Mhm.
You know?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I feel like everybody that we meet in life, like you always learn something from them. So, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely staying open.
that's true. Um, so I think that sums up or concludes our session or discussion, and I'm really happy that we got to do this. I really was waiting for the right person in the right moment to find somebody whom has the same love for type and INFPs, being an INFP themselves. So I'm so happy that you said yes and that it happened. And I'm looking forward to kind of to hopefully do more talks like you with, talks like this with you in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
future. And yeah, if you want to follow Candice, I'll put on the links in the description. And thank you everybody for watching. For anybody who's able to finish the whole video, we're super grateful, and I hope that you'll like and subscribe to the channel if it helped you, or if there are more things that you'd like to learn about type or even INFPs, or if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comment section. And so yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Thank you,
Thank
Candice.
you.